So in the last lecture we had looked at several topics. We had looked at forms, we had looked at form attributes, we had looked at form elements, where we had things like this for the range, for the number. We looked at the output, the element of the form. So we are going to look at now input types, and there are over 20 different input types that specifically deal with different information on your form. I think the actual number would be around 22, but at least there are over 20, and I believe more will be coming in the years to come as they keep on standardizing and maybe adding styles to these forms. So for the purpose of today, we can just a small reminder here in case we're going to look at the range here, but we can look at a few options that it has. If we are going to use the type as range, we could also say minimum 0, for example, and then maximum, that this should go to maximum of 200. So this is what the user is seeing, 0, then between the 0 is the range bar up to 100. But now since we have set the maximum to be 200 here, you could go ahead when we refresh our page to refresh us to 0 to 200, and when we move along now we can surpass the 130 maximum mark going to 200 and the maximum being 230. Then we could do this or whatever we want to do with that. So we shall also look at this in another way, maybe using say like step that you would need to remember. I thought I would begin with this in case you finished the first tutorial of introduction to forms, and then maybe you quickly went to part 2 of introduction to forms. So now we are going to look at types of inputs, and that is what we shall cover first before covering other things like input attributes and input form attributes. So this would be part 2. Then in part 3 is where I felt we needed to have 3 series. This part to only deal with, we dedicate it to looking at input types in detail. So the first one was text, where we had form, leave around the action, we had label, and then could be, this was f name, so we can now change this to full name. Okay, then we had an input here that is text now. Then name is going to be also f name, and the id, which must also look like the 4 attribute of the label element, is also f name. So when we check it out, we shall have now created something like this. If we want this to go down, then we can simply put a small br here, but we can use flexbox to do the same without using br. We check out our tutorial on form styling, and especially advanced form styling is where we use flexbox to do that. So we could look at another type called password. We can come here, we paste, this is br, we can change this to your password, user password, for example. That could be name, this could be password, and we can change this to password. So when we come to our page here, we we shall find that we've left it as text. Remember, I want to show you something. When we come and start typing, we are able to see the characters of the password, but then you realize that when you are typing in a password, you do not see these characters. You simply see either asterisks or small circles that are filled with the black by default, and that's just to mask the password. You could see, then that is what we use. We change the input type, so now that is what we mean by input types. Second one being password. When we refresh our page and now we start typing in, you won't see anything. Okay, you won't see anything apart from being actually just those that you will be able to see. When we have we look at submit, but we shall look at it at the end of this, maybe, because it would involve us setting up our server. So we could have this, we could look at another type, or we could just deal with it here and we are done with it. Let us copy this, and no, you can just put an input type here that we call, say, submit. Okay, I'm going to look at them at once. I hope. Submit. If you do not give it value, it will just pick the same word submit. It will just sit like that. But you could give it a value, anything that may be click submit. Click submit. So that is the value you've given it, and that is what the user will read. Click submit. That is what you have decided to call it. We have another button, another input value here that we shall see. Let us put them here all at once, and then this input type, instead of being submit, we can call it reset. And like I said, if you leave the value, it will just be reset, so we can leave it as it is, and now we shall read the word reset. So we can now come here, just add in a small element, input type here to increase our number. We can call this uname for username. And we could have it like that. What the reset button does is to make sure you have given default values here. Okay, you have given default values here. We don't need to give a default value for the password. You said value, and the value for full name you said is Tarima Benjamin. The value for username was, say, Ben Sky. Okay, so those are the default values, and maybe said submit. Can say new. So when I click submit, this information is submitted. We could come here and change this action to say form.php. So we would have created this form as a form.php if we need self, that it does not need to go anywhere. If this would be named as form.php here, such that when we refresh, or rather we submit, our information can be picked by the same form, and processed by the same form. The method here, the method is post. You don't want things to be seen. You can turn on autocomplete. Those are things we looked at. So we could come here, refresh our page, and what we need is to go back to this form. You can type in a password, and then we click submit. So you can see your file couldn't be accessed. The reason they are doing this is because they cannot access form.php for us to be able to access our information. Now, assuming we had reached here in typing another name like Ronald, or like say John, could type another name John here, but then you say John Renes, but then you say no, that is not what I want. Or maybe for the form, then you just say let me go with the default, and you can see they could have set the button of reset just here or on the bottom of the form. So when you say reset, it gets back to that particular, those particulars somebody has already mentioned or inserted or predefined for you. We could, depending on how you set up your server, I am using an Ubuntu server, so I could go to where it is located. I should be having my form.php already created there. A simple lookalike of this. So now you can see I could put this information here. Just putting anything just in case it was a requirement, but these are the things I want you to see. And when I say submit, the information is now processed, and this is what I will see at the end. So there are limitations to the form. I think this was limited to 6 characters. We shall look at max length and other attributes when you come max length, minimum length, and stuff like that. You can see the password. So as an administrator, maybe you would want to see that or not, then you would not want to pick this information. Shall see that later. So I've not shown you how to set up all this PHP thing because the tutorial is about HTML and CSS, but the same thing would work for reset. Now you can differentiate reset and submit buttons and what they do. So those are the buttons. We had looked at those we want to repeat. We had looked at radio. You can check out the first tutorial on Introduction to Forms, part 1. We also looked at a checkbox. We also looked at a button, input type button, like where you see password you put button, where you see password you put radio, and checkbox. We had looked at those. We can now go on and look at another one called the color. We can say label for, let's say, maybe F color for favorite color. Then we could say color, or pick your color, or you can say choose color type. Then we can be on the same line, input. This is color specific. It could have an ID, which is F color. It also has a name, which is F color. Then now when we come down here, we need this to push them further down here. When we come over here and refresh, we shall see that by default black is the color even when you check in Microsoft Office and other packages, they will always have a default color. By default here, the color we are having is black, but when you click on here, there is a color picker. There would be a different one. This is Chrome, so if you have Firefox, you would also have a different color picker. But the most important thing is that you have a color picker where you can easily select the name of the color if you want to use it here or in the program, and just say the color to help you. You would access it and say, so here you can play around with the red, green values. You can say hex if you are very conversant with those, where you can mix numbers, things like hash, 2G and 5IL. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6, and that would be the color you will have selected. But the RGB here, we can use this to pick the color we want, and then come here to pick the orientation, the contrast, the brightness of how that color will look like. Okay, so here, if that is the number to be picked, which usually PHP prefers, if you're going to put it manually, especially like in your code where you want to say, you can copy this, because the default was black. You could say here that value is this. Sorry, I think we did not pick it. You could come here, select a certain value color that you would want to see, and you can pick it, see property there with the number, knowing that we have a hash, we have 32C, 36A, and then I could have this number as my color, the color I want. So value would be a hash 32C, 36A as capital. When we refresh, we have created our own value color instead of black. So now somebody else can pick any other color, and then they will, that is, if that is what they desire, that is what they will submit. So that is color. We could also look at date. In most cases, I know if you have been trying to understand forms, you have already seen sort of a calendar coming up when you are going to put in your day, date of birth, or a certain date and stuff like that. You've seen it on many occasions, and I'm sure you were happy, and now you are wondering how this is. How do I have to create all those numbers? Do I have to write like the first time when I started these things, I would wonder, do I have to say type them manually using the other option thing from, say, the today's date up to way back in maybe, and then I say people who are still living, maybe 1900 people are no longer living, so then that would be okay. Or maybe 1920 up to date people could have, that is the maximum of a lifespan or something. So you would try to play around with it and not understand, but as you keep, it could be that is the same we've been having, but then we have what we call an input type, that is date. So when you simply refresh, you can see it here, choose date. This is your calendar. Firefox will display it differently, and it is saying month. So the month here could be let's say we are picking the month of December, we are picking the date of say 28th. The year you can put it in there, or you can use this picker to give you years. You could see them here. You could rotate and move to those years of long ago quickly, like this, 1998. This could be the year you want, and it was a Wednesday. Sorry, I didn't press enter, so 1988. So this is your date, and with this calendar you can quickly select the things that you would want. This date also has got other variables, attributes. I use variables because there are other programming languages that come in hand, especially when you are dealing in many areas. Here we call them attributes. You could have different attributes. For example, we could say, let us try them out here. We could come here and say that choose, let's say, max date. So this will be M date. This is also M date, and this is also M date, or max. You can use this as max date, much as the input type will read date, but we could set the maximum. This is the maximum date, so we don't need a value here. Even this one here was of no use, then this is of no use. So we could say that max we equal to, since the type is date, because we can use max for other things, okay, like ranges or other inputs. Can use maximum length here. I'll show it to you, but we shall cover it better under attributes. We could say maximum that it should be a date before maybe today, for example, which is 2021 -07-26. Okay, that is the maximum date. Here we could change this to, min for minimum date, and then we say choose min date or minimum date. There's no purpose for this value, so we set minimum, and this could be a date not beyond this. So maximum is a date. Okay, we can say a date after this. So we could say, for example, that whatever we are looking for, or it could be that you are setting your semester, and the minimum date, for example, let me use that example, 2021-07-26, that you cannot pick a date below this. Why? Because we are assuming whatever you are doing, this input will not work, because you are trying to put a date of, say, yesterday, whereas we are saying that the maximum date here could be maybe at the end of this month. So put in a date after this, and a date, can make it 25 here, such that you can even include today's date. And the maximum date you can pick is, say, at the end of this month, which is 30th. So when we come here and refresh our form, we shall see them like this. So we are saying that it should stop at, let's say, what if we wanted to pick, even if we wanted to go to the month, you can see the month function is already inactive. When we go here, it is active because it is not set. The month itself is inactive, so I can't go beyond this. I can't pick a date here because I am saying the maximum should be 30th of this month, and I cannot say, you can see, I can't click here and we get to edit it. I can rather pick a date below this, that it could have been 2020 and it will still be okay, but not a date beyond 2021 of 30th. The same applies to minimum date. Sorry, it is trying to process the information. The minimum date, you can see it cannot go below this month. So we are assuming they have set this input field to say that registration, you need to have registered between 26th of this month to 30th, between 26th and 30th. So we could say, come here. So there's this minimum and maximum. We can copy this and paste it here, and then we can make can just put out these ones, and I can refresh my page and you can see what I am having. So it is picking this date. The year is already selected for me. The birth, the month is already selected for me. The only date, the only thing I can choose is a date. That, and which date can also not go beyond 30th because I cannot have another month. You can see the month is already pre-selected for me. And how does that happen? Because we said that the minimum, or you should not put in a date below 25th, which was yesterday, so you can't go back, and you also cannot put in a date beyond this month or beyond 30th of this month. So that is why we have the month and the year covered, because we set the year to be 2021 for both occasions. You see, if this maximum was now changed to 2022, then it would be active. You are saying start from today until next year 30th of July, but that is not what we are setting up here. We are simply setting the minimum and maximum dates. So that could be a very important input field, especially if you want time stamps or date stamps. Then you will get to know, even here it means if that date was set here to be required, that you must select this date. Okay, then if that time, if you are coming on 31st and say submit, if you are coming, you can see please fill out this field, because we said it is required, and we know that if it is next month you will not submit. So the form is locked by simply setting that date you won't submit, because it is that date is required, and since the date is required and you are past time, the form will not go. So that alone can lock this form. We can also set another way, because that is, we can also set another function here. Can set another function here that we can set another function here called date time. You can say choose date. You can say choose date date and time. Date and time. This one will be we can call this the date. Okay, even this one here we can call it the date, and we then call this one here date time dash local. This is used on situations where you want the local information to be picked, the local date and time that is residing on the machine itself. Right now is Monday, July 26th, and the time is say about 16:12 or 16:13 hours, and that is exactly what this information would pick because you are setting a local time. Let me show you here. When we refresh our page, you can see the date and then the time. So according to how the machine is picked for me, that time it is telling us it is already PM. This is the time we have here that we can pick, and the date of today, so it is picking itself there. This would also work as a time stamp, and once again you can set the maximum and minimum. Say you are saying this form can only be submitted between that particular date of today with this function here, but then also here is the time when this information was picked, and we could restrict the time by saying it should be between maybe midday and 6 p.m. or from morning up to 4 p.m. because we know the company closes at 4 p.m. So the minimum and maximum are very good attributes for playing around with how the form can behave. Another input type is an email. We can look at an email. An email is also text, but whenever you use email, then you command things differently, because especially if you are dealing with the mobile phones, they will know that if you have set this to be email, then we can as well automatically add a .com at the end. You would have say info, and then it adds for you info.com or info at Gmail, and then it knows I'm calling it your email, use the email or your email. Then I change this type to email. So here it would know automatically that I am dealing with an email, and when I am saying info, say engineer Ben at gmail.com. So if it was a smartphone, then this function would be activated properly, and you would be able to see that on your keyboard the .com function, depending on the keyboard type you have set, can be activated. You just tap on it instead of typing the whole word. We can look at another attribute here that we call file. Different browsers render different information here. They render different information here. We can say your file, the file, then we can simply call this file, and then we can say upload. So when we do that and we refresh our page, this is what we see here. We can see choose a file. Firefox would put for you browse, and other web browsers could have their own information, but here it is something that is active, much as you would not submit and see the file done, but as long as you accept to pick that file, like I said, we shall come to other things We shall use other parameters here like PHP. Rather, when we come to PHP, we shall be able to use this same function to give us the information we want. So that would be how our function would work. You can using say Firefox. See, it is still trying to give me where to select my file from. I could just look for a small thing, maybe my SQL here. You can say open, and you can see my file is now being able to is now read that I have picked my SQL. We can look at month, and there is month, there is week. Those are not supported by many browsers, but month would help you select, for example, the month and the year. You can have them here. You can copy this, and then we change this to select a month. Maybe you are interested in picking the month and the year, just changing this as month. I'm not going to adjust other things just in the interest of time, but you would need to create them differently. So if I have a month, you can see now I can have month and year, not if I say this month then they will pick that. I don't have date now. The same applies if I was to choose a week. Can copy this in Firefox, for example. You would not see that function working. I think they will have to give us new updates. I can change this to week. Maybe let's change this to week also for purposes of viewership. So I have week. You can see which week we are at, week 30. And so we can say so this will give us a week and the year. We can maybe choose to say that since I am if you get 4 weeks by 7 months, you will get 28. You will get 28 weeks. If we are going to say this week, you will get 28 weeks. But then after 28 weeks, you will add in the days that have elapsed according to which week we are dealing with, and then you will come back to our 30 weeks. So we could look at another one called number, and number defines the numeric input. You can also set its restrictions on the numbers you want. For example, you could be saying on a scale of 1 to 10, somebody selects a certain number between those values. Then you would have to find what those values represent. Maybe 1 is very weak, and like that, like how you would do research. Or they could be ratings, or they could be the number of plates somebody wants. In your capacity as a company, you can only pack up to maybe 20 or 30 plates, or 10, so those are the numbers you put in. Or somebody can say you put up something and then you say chicken pieces, and then you allow somebody to select the number of chicken pieces they would want. So there are many areas where we can apply that number function. So we could just come here and say, you can say select the number of pieces, or plates, no problem. Then we change this to number. I'm leaving the rest because in the interest of time, otherwise we'll change this to suit proper naming. But the most important thing is to set my minimum. It could start from 1 plate, since the person is ordering food, they want a plate, and maybe up to 10 plates. For us, that is what we can afford, maybe serving or transporting. So when we do this, we can't go beyond the 1, and the maximum we have is 10. So we can only get you 10 pieces or 10 plates or whatever you want. In Firefox, this would be displayed. In Chrome, they were hidden until you hover over here. So do not get worried that why can't I see my upward and downward arrows. There are several inputs. We have seen so far. We've looked at required, rather attribute. We have looked at required. We've looked at mean, maximum. We shall look at pattern. We shall look at, we've seen value. We shall also look at step, and we can look at, for example, step right here. We can say that the minimum, assuming you are calculating, and the maximum is say 100. Or let us start from 0. Okay, the maximum is 100, the minimum is 0, and you are saying that your step is 10, so it should be counting 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 up to 100. When we come and refresh here, you can see we have our 0 here, then we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You could also set the initial value to start from. Maybe you could save value, and save value start at 10. Okay, much as we could go backwards to 0, since we have set the minimum to be 0. So here we could say, like I've said, 10, 20, like that. So that is that's how step works. It also works on ranges. We shall see it. We could look at range. We had already seen it somewhere. I could pick it here. We had seen a range in the first tutorial. We could come here and say maybe assuming you would have designed, say, an app, maybe temperature, or you are like the function of setting the temperature in a microwave. There is a range for you scroll, but inside everything calibrated there represents a certain function inside. What you see as you rotate, or volume, for example. So we could say temperature here. Temperature. We could even come here and be polite to say set temperature. And this becomes range. Right now, you know why I'm leaving these, because they are not the main ones. Then we could say maybe the minimum temperature could be, let's say, 3. Then we have maximum, maybe it be say 100. Okay. When we come here, you see it here. We could come and say that this could be 3, and then this could be 100. so the user will be able to know how this is moving. And we could set the value here, because by default it will pick half. We could set the value to be 5, such that we can see where it is starting from. Okay, so here you move, and then you are able to come to the maximum. There are other designs you can use, especially with JavaScript, to show you as you move which percentage you are at. That would also help you to know how to navigate. Search is another input we deal with when creating a search bar. When you come to form responsive, you will see how we can design it. You can see it from there. Otherwise, we would need some bit of PHP and JavaScript to help us, especially PHP, to help us search this information, say, on your site. There are quite others. We can look at maybe about 3. Let us look at time. We could come here and say that choose the time, then we change this type to time. So when we come here and refresh, we shall now have time. You can see a clock here, hours, minutes and seconds. You can see the time today. We have not set any maximum or minimum. They are telling us that this is the AM. Below would be AM, but here we are still in PM, so this could be maybe 11 PM and 28 after half past. See that at half past at half past 11 PM. That is the time. It could also have restrictions. You want to go in them, you can try them out. For purposes of your understanding, it also has restrictions that we set, like on the date here. You could set the restrictions of that time, and it would also help you lock your form, because probably the thing is out of time or out of date. Then you could play around with other things using JavaScript. If this is not, if the date is not this, then probably do this and all that stuff. We could deal with the second last. We have another one we can say maybe enter phone number. You can just say phone number. Then we can change this to 10. Now, there are many things you can do to it. You could add in, let me first explain here. We've got another attribute here that we call pattern. You can first refresh here, and then you see phone number. It's just there like that. But when we begin things of, say, pattern, we could say, for example, the country here is Uganda, and we usually have 4 digits at the start. That would say, so this means the pattern here would be begin with 0 to 9. Okay, then the first one should be 4 characters. That is what it means. Dash here, then repeat the same thing, 0 to 9. But here we add 3, then we move on. We are saying again move 0 to 9, and then the rest ones are also 3. So this would mean that you are saying this would be 4, the first one is 4, then a dash, and then 3, a dash, and then 3. So this would be, say, 0779, those are 4, 244, those are 3, 244, and that will be a certain number here in Uganda, or preferably East Africa, because they use generally the same pattern. But we usually do not set this, because they are, unless you are very sure that you are only interested in your community and then they have a specific certain pattern, then it is okay, you can force a user, because this is also a constraint. If we were to put one required here, that you must put in this phone number, then we could alert someone that placeholder, maybe placeholder, can put a placeholder here that is going to show somebody. Maybe we can pick a random number. Okay, we could say 1 2 3 4, then a dash, 3 3 3, a dash, 3 3 3, so that this should be 3, then this should be 4. So when we come and refresh, this is what we have. So this person is expected to say 0779 dash 244 dash 244. Then this will be proper information. But if somebody tried to say 07799, because remember those would be 3, that is a 6, and then 4 would be 10. You can say 01779794690. But if we were to add other figures here, then the pattern would not match to be that of a phone number. Else you would set the maximum here, which would be a better preference than we could say placeholder here, maximum maybe 10, maximum 10 digits, 10 dash digits. Then I can remove my pattern here. This way I'm requiring only 10 digits. Or you could leave all this and say placeholder phone number. But if you are specific to the region, then you set this. You set the maximum here to be 10, and it has, so you can say max equals 10. So we can refresh our page. We are just saying phone number as a placeholder. So we have this as our phone number. Type is tail. That way we are able to understand how the format is going to look like and what we expect better for validations. But other phone numbers, for example, require text. Not, you say, you can say like 1 dash bishop 2, those are texts. So that is why we simply, a mixture of text and number, that is why we simply leave all those parameters out and or attributes out, and then we can do just to record the person is supposed to enter in that particular telephone number. The last one is the URL. You could also use it. It acts just like email, but here it knows that you are going to say HTTP or HTTPS, and that it also knows that there is a .com or a .something at the end of your URL. So this strictly, if you make this as your URL, it should know that that is how it knows that whatever you're going to put in is a URL. You would just change here to URL, we can leave the rest as it is. Okay, the most important thing would be the type. So now it knows inside here that you're starting with say HTTP or HTTPS, and then how the whole absolute URL is going to be. So these are input types. This would be part 2, or mark the end of part 2 of Introduction to Forms. We shall look at later. In part 3, we shall be looking at input attributes, where we need placeholder values and other things. And then we shall also look at the input form attributes, and we see what those represent. Otherwise, thank you.